When Shaquille O'Neal walked into May's kitchen on a Sunday afternoon in December, the lunch rush was almost over. The restaurant was the kind of place that does not need to advertise. A diner on the east side of Atlanta with 12 tables, a counter with 6 stools, a pie case by the register with 3 kinds of pie under glass, and a reputation built entirely on the fact that the food was exactly what it said it was. No menu with photographs. No specials written on a chalkboard in 3 colors. A laminated card, 4 pages, the same since 1987, according to the sign above the register that nobody had updated since whoever put it up. He was wearing a blue fleece pullover, dark jeans, clean boots. A cap. No jewelry. He came through the door at 1:47 p.m. and found a corner booth and sat with his back to the wall, the way his stepfather had taught him to sit in any room he did not already know. So you can see what comes in before it reaches you. A server came to the table within 2 minutes. Young man, mid-20s, maybe younger. The kind of young that is hard to read when someone has been tired for long enough that the tiredness sits on top of the youth like a second face. His name badge said Darius. He had a pen behind one ear, a notepad in his left hand, and the posture of someone who had been on his feet since before this shift started. He smiled when he reached the booth, a real smile. Not a performed one, the kind that costs something to produce when you are running on the wrong side of empty. He said, "Good afternoon. Can I start you off with something to drink?" Shaq said, "Sweet tea. And take your time. I'm in no hurry." Darius looked at him for 1 beat longer than the interaction required. Not recognition, just the micro-adjustment that people make when someone tells them to take their time and they are not certain whether to believe it. He went to get the tea. Here's what Shaq noticed while he waited. On the counter near the register, below the overhang where the servers picked up their orders, there was a folded piece of paper. The kind torn from a notepad. The kind people leave notes on. It had been folded in half and then in half again, the way you fold something when you want it to stay private in a semi-public place. It had Darius written on the outside in capital letters. It had been there long enough that someone had set a water glass on top of it and left a ring on the edge. It had not been picked up. The second thing, on the shelf behind the counter, between the coffee station and the stack of laminated menus, was a textbook. Not a cookbook, an actual textbook. The spine read, "Fundamentals of Nursing Practice, 4th edition." It was thick, worn at the corners, with 3 or 4 sticky tabs poking out from different sections. Someone had been reading it. Recently. The third thing. At table 7, a couple had finished eating. Their check had been on the table for some time. Darius had walked past that table twice. He had not picked it up. He was not ignoring it. He was managing it, deliberately, keeping his distance from it the way you keep your distance from a table that has something on it you are not yet ready to face. When he finally went, he stood with his back to the room while he looked at the receipt. And his shoulders did something small and involuntary before he turned back around. Shaq watched. He said nothing. He ordered the pot roast and the cornbread when Darius came back, and he ate slowly, and he kept watching. Now, here's what Darius Coleman did not know that Sunday afternoon. There was something Shaquille O'Neal had been carrying for 11 days, not about May's kitchen, not about the sweet tea or the pot roast, but about a name on a list that had come to him through a program his foundation had been running for 3 years. A mentorship pipeline for first-generation college students who had taken on work to stay enrolled. The list had 41 names on it. One of them was Darius Coleman, 24 years old, junior year nursing program, Georgia State University, who had been working doubles at May's kitchen since his financial aid was reduced in October, and who had not told his program advisor because he was not the kind of person who told his program advisor things like that. What Darius had no idea about was one single fact, and it was sitting on the table in a white envelope under Shaq's menu. Stay with us for the whole video, because what happened at table 4 of May's kitchen that Sunday will remind you that the most important thing you can give a person who is drowning quietly is proof that someone noticed. Shaquille Rashawn O'Neal was born on March 6, 1972, in Newark, New Jersey, and he knew, from the time he was old enough to understand money, that the distance between having enough and not having enough was not always a matter of effort. His mother, Lucille O'Neal, was 5'2", iron-spined, and meticulous about the household ledger in a way that was not anxiety, but precision. She knew, at any given moment, what they had, what they owed, and what the difference between those two numbers permitted them to do. She taught her son, without lectures, that dignity is not a luxury, that a person doing honest work deserves to be seen doing it, that the right response to witnessing someone struggle is not to look away and not to make a performance of noticing, but to do something real, quietly, that stays after you have left the room. She told him once, when he was 9 years old and watching a man on their block argue with a landlord in the street, "That man is not failing. That man is being failed. There is a difference. Remember that." He had been remembering it for 45 years. His stepfather, Philip Arthur Harrison, Sergeant Philip Arthur Harrison, U.S. Army, had arrived in that house when Shaq was 7 and left a phrase that became the frame around everything. "Don't be a reaction. Be a response." He said it in moments of anger, in moments of injustice, in the driveway at 5 in the morning, the day Shaq left for LSU, one more time against his ear before letting go. Philip Harrison died in 2013. The phrase did not. It went everywhere his son went, including into a corner booth at May's kitchen on a Sunday afternoon in December. 4 championships, Hall of Fame, $400 million. The public story was the basketball. The private story, the one that did not get written about, was the infrastructure, the foundation programs, the scholarships, the mentorship pipelines, the quiet investments in neighborhoods, and people that did not generate headlines because they were not designed to. He had funded first-generation student support programs in 3 cities. He had done it because he understood. In the specific way that people who almost didn't make it understand, that the difference between getting through and not getting through is almost never talent. It is almost always someone or something that shows up at the exact moment the person is deciding whether to keep going. He had almost not kept going himself. In the spring of his freshman year at LSU, when the money did not work and the pride would not let him ask, and he had sat in a room for 3 days deciding. What had pulled him through was a phone call from Philip Harrison, who had somehow known without being told, and who had said one sentence that Shaq had written down and kept. "You don't have to have this figured out. You just have to stay." He had stayed. He had been trying to be that phone call for other people ever since. Not loudly, not with cameras, but with programs and lists, and one name on a list of 41 that had stopped being a name and become a person over the course of 11 days. The manager came out of the back at 2:11 p.m. His name was not on a badge. He was in his 40s, button-down shirt, with the energy of a man who has decided that authority is most effectively expressed through public correction. He walked the floor the way certain managers walk floors. Not checking on things, demonstrating that he is checking on things, which is a performance that requires an audience and always finds one. He stopped at the counter. He looked at the order queue. He looked at a check from table 7. An error somewhere, a discount misapplied, something small enough that in another room, at another time, It would have been corrected in 30 seconds and forgotten. He called Darius over. The conversation was not loud. That was the particular skill of it. It was calibrated precisely to be audible at the surrounding tables without being loud enough to constitute a scene that anyone could point to. The manager explained the error with the patience of someone performing patience, which is a different thing entirely from having it. He used the words every time and again, and how many times. He said them without raising his voice, which was worse than raising it, because it removed Darius's ability to respond the way you respond to something that is actually loud. You cannot match the pitch of something performed quietly. You can only absorb it. Darius stood with his notepad at his side and his pen in his hand and his jaw set in the way of someone holding themselves still, inside something they cannot respond to without losing something they cannot afford to lose. An older woman at the counter, late 60s, gray coat, reading glasses on a chain, had stopped eating. She was looking at her plate, not at Darius and the manager, but she had stopped eating, which was its own kind of witness. The couple at table 3 had gone quiet and were reading the specials board they had already read. The manager finished. He went back through the swinging door. Darius stood at the counter for a moment. He picked up the folded note with his name on it, the one that had been sitting under a water glass since before Shaq arrived. He read it. His face did not change. He folded it back up, put it in his apron pocket in the particular way of someone storing something they are going to deal with later, when they have the room for it. He came to table 4 to refill the sweet tea. Shaq said, "You doing okay?" Darius said, "Yes, sir. Can I get you anything else?" Shaq said, "I'm good. Thank you for taking care of me today." Darius looked at him, that same beat, that same micro-adjustment, and said, "Of course," and moved to the next table. His voice had not changed. His face had not changed. He had gotten good enough at this that it no longer broke in public. And that was the part that was hardest to watch. Shaq finished the pot roast. He finished the cornbread. He ordered a piece of the sweet potato pie because it was December and because it was there and because some things you do not need a reason for. While he ate the pie, he took the white envelope out from under the menu. He had been carrying it for 11 days. Inside was a check for $10,000 and a folded piece of paper. 1 page, handwritten, the way he had written it 3 times before he wrote it the way he wanted it to be. He had written it in his own handwriting, which was large and uneven and completely legible, on plain white paper, with a black pen, sitting at the kitchen table in Orlando at 7 in the morning. He put the envelope on the table. He put the check receipt on top of it with the tip written in the tip line. $10,000. The numbers even. No hesitation. He put his hand flat on top of everything for a moment, the way you put your hand on something you want to stay where you put it. Then he stood up. He put on his cap. He walked to the register, paid in cash, nodded to the woman at the counter, and walked out of May's kitchen into the December afternoon without looking back. Darius Coleman cleared table 4 at 2:43 p.m. He picked up the receipt. He looked at the tip line. He stood very still. The kind of still that is not calm, but is what comes right before calm has to be decided about. He turned the receipt over, looking for an explanation, because that was the only rational response to a number that was not rational in the context of a Sunday lunch at May's kitchen. There was no explanation on the receipt. He picked up the white envelope. He opened it. He unfolded the check first and read the number. He put the check on the table. He picked up the folded piece of paper. He unfolded it. The note said, "Darius, I know about the program. I know about Georgia State. I know about the doubles you've been working since October. And I know you haven't told anyone because that's the kind of person you are. This is not charity. this is what someone should have done sooner. The nursing program needs people who show up the way you show up. Stay in it. S-O-N. P.S. You have your mother's persistence. She would be proud of how hard you're working. Keep going. He read it once. He read it again. He sat down in the booth at table 4, not collapsing, just sitting, the way a person sits when the legs make a decision the brain hasn't finished making yet. What came next was not loud, and it was not dramatic. It was the quiet release of a person setting down a weight they had stopped noticing was heavy, because they had been carrying it long enough that it felt like part of them. 3 weeks from the decision his body had been making without his permission, and then this. A check and a note on a Sunday afternoon that said, "Someone saw you, and it mattered, and you should stay." Ethel Greer, 68 years old, retired school librarian, May's Kitchen every Sunday for 11 years without exception, looked at the young man sitting alone in the corner booth and put down her fork. She did not go to him. She did not say anything. She simply stopped and looked at him for a long moment. The way you look at something true when you recognize it. Then she picked up her fork and went back to her lunch. Because some moments need a witness and not an audience. She had been 60-something years on this earth, learning the difference. Darius Coleman finished his shift. He finished the next one. He did not quit. He had been 3 weeks from the decision, not the conscious decision, but the one the body makes when the math stops working. And the options narrow to the ones that feel survivable. And then the envelope had arrived, and the math had changed. And the option that had always been the right one was available again. He graduated from Georgia State's nursing program in May, 18 months later. He walked across the stage on a Thursday morning. His mother sat in the 3rd row. She had driven up from Savannah the night before. She had pressed his shirt herself, the morning of, in the hotel room, because that was the kind of thing she did. And because Darius had not asked her to, and she had done it anyway. He did not send a thank you card to the foundation. He thought about it for a long time. He decided instead that the right response to what he had been given was not a card, but a practice. That every patient he would see, in every shift of every year of his career, would receive from him the same quality of attention and care and full human presence that he had given to table 4 of May's Kitchen on a Sunday afternoon in December, when he believed nobody important was watching. That was what he decided the note had asked of him. He thought that was probably right. The note is in a frame on the wall of his apartment. The frame cost $12. He picked it out himself. He has moved 3 times since December of that year. The frame has gone with him each time. P.S. You have your mother's persistence. She would be proud of how hard you're working. Keep going. He never asked for credit. He never did. And neither should you. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you are watching from. This story deserves to be seen everywhere. If it moved you even 1%, hit the like button, because that is how more people find it. Subscribe and join this community, because we tell stories here about what people do when nobody is watching. The next video is ready for you right now. We will see you there.